What's up, guys? So I'm back with episode 2 of coding a MUD in Go. If you remember, or I should say if this is your first time, basically I decided to kind of build the basics of a multi-user dungeon or text-based online RPG, effectively like an MMO, but without graphics. Do it in Go to kind of give you a sense of my thought process, how I think about coding. Just to walk through things. This is totally unedited, unscripted, and so there might be periods where I'm thinking. It's a little difficult to code, from scratch and come up with ideas while being recorded. I find it a little bit difficult, kind of like during an interview when you're at a whiteboard or being asked to code something, and you have to think about it, and also have the pressure of time. And someone watching you, while you code. So that can be stressful, but we're gonna get into it and see how it goes here. So yeah, let's we're gonna basically pick up where we left off. I think there's a couple changes I made just after the last video, just moving things around in different files, which I'll walk you through. So the goal of today. Well, let's first look at what we have here. So if you remember, let's how we run the thing. So if we run the server, we have two consoles here. Let me make this so you can see it. Two terminal windows here. So if I telnet into this thing, what am I slow? Okay, so I'm connecting. It created an ID for me, user 82, and it displayed the room that I'm in. And then if I connect over here, I'm user 88. I'm in the same room, and so with the original user, I can say hello. Oh, this is not working. So that's another thing. Somehow I broke it. Okay, so that guy's working. This guy is not. So that's a bug. Also, if I go east, it'll say the room I'm in, but it's not broadcasting that the person left. So if I type here. Okay, so it's being broadcast to the wrong room. Something's not working here. So what we have here is a mess on our hands. Now, I could sit on stream or on recording here and try and fix that bug, but I'm not too thrilled with the existing layout of the room. I feel like I hacked some stuff in. I have some random maps and things like that here. So I'm going to take a step back and think about how to restructure this and fix bugs in the meantime. So let's close Twitter. So let's do that. Let's close this and just look at what's going on here. So in the main file, there's one package here. I have this session object, which really just holds on to a connection. I have a start game loop, which is looping over the events sent from the connection handler, and then a couple basic events here in the main function. I created this model file, which just has our models that we're using. This will probably change. And then we have this simple server, which is, starts a TCP server, starts listening for connections. This is when a connection is started, or when a connection is created from a new client. We come in and we handle the connection. We create a session and a user. I don't really like that. And then we send an event that the user joined. And then we start waiting for input, and we have this kind of hack in here for looking for directions and then sending move events. I don't like this level here. I think we can move some of this code out into a place that's better suited for handling users and things like directions and inputs. This can actually be pretty simple. So and then we have this world class that's kind of like a grab bag of stuff. It has all the users in the world. It has these random functions, get room, get users in room, broadcast, things of that nature. I think it's fine to have this class world. I would maybe call it, game or something, but, we can, either is fine. And then we created the rooms here. Okay, so that's the basics. So what do I want to do? Well, let's just plan this out. So now we have a session object, which a session is like, when on new connection, we create a session, create session. We should then, I think, send new session event. We should send that back to the game, and then the game can effectively, turn a session into a user object. And then remember, so a user is like an account. So with an account, I think in a game like this, you could technically have multiple characters. So what we want is kind of a structure like this, where a session, let's say, understands, can link, well, I guess what we could do is the user object, the user object that we create, has a handle to the session. Maybe sessions don't need to care or know about the user object, so we create this reverse mapping here. We do need to be able to go from a session to a user, though, so we know that. But the system can handle that just by getting, let's say, session ID. So when a session is created, we create a session and ID. The session needs to hold on to the connection so we can send stuff back. The user needs to hold on to the session, right? Yeah. And we need an index from to go from session to user. Okay. And then a user can also have the current character. And similarly, a character needs to be able to, if you're interacting with characters in the world, one character and another, you need to be able to get back to the session so you can send data back, or back to the connection eventually. So a session could have a pointer back to the user that instantiated it. I'm not a huge fan of when you have two objects that have a bidirectional relationship, that they have pointers to each other. Which means now you need to manage those pointers. Like when you delete one, you need to make sure that the pointers get updated in both places, things like that. A safer way typically is to have a pointer in one direction, one object that owns the other. So it's responsible for breaking that connection when one of the objects is deleted. And the other object maybe to have an ID back to the other one. So some indirection there, so that, let's say there's a case where, it tries to get at that backup stream to its owning object, and for whatever reason it's deleted. There's not a hard crash or something. You just kind of say, hey, is my user available? If not, okay, fine. But then again, you might have a bug, so this might be something, that you just have to deal with and have tests for to make sure that if you do have bidirectional relationships, which is fairly easy, or bidirectional pointers, that you just you manage it properly. And so anyways, that's all to say is should a character have pointer back to the user, and user have a pointer back to the session. I don't really like the session, and then there's the concept of what should know about the other thing, right? Because technically, character could have an ID. Let's say whatever, parent ID. Now we're getting into a whole node graph thing. But anyway, character well, let's say character is like a a thing that's owned, that's controlled by a user, right? So it might make sense to have some sort of, maybe a character does know about the user that controls it, or it just has it does have parent ID. Maybe that user is some AI, not a human user, right? I mean, whatever. But the question is, should characters know about the user or the interface or something like that? We can deal with this later. We can abstract it later. So we should just make it simple on ourselves here and just allow for these pointers back. Now, I really don't want the session to know anything about users, which is why I don't have this user object. I think these two can basically exist in the same space for now. Okay, and then so the other thing we have is a room, right? And a room can contain users. Here's another situation where we have a bidirectional relationship. A room can have many users, but a character, actually, I'm sorry, this should be a character. A room actually can have many entities, right? They're not just characters. You might abstract this to an entity, and then be able to get at a given entity, given its ID, right? So that means now we have this concept of an entity, which is a thing in the world, which we know has an ID. And so character is now also an entity type. And a room, I mean, could be an entity type, even though we'll say that rooms can't contain other rooms for one reason or another. But it's nice if there's a global set of IDs here. And then, of course, this means that the world can contain all the entities in the world, right? I mean, why not? I mean, it could have a map of these things, too. Okay, so room contains entities. So that means when we want to broadcast something, if character says something, we can query its room. That also means we need to know what room we're in. And say, hey, give me all the entities in the room, and then send a message to it, which is like, could be something like talk, like, the character just talked. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, we're 12 minutes in. We haven't started coding, so apologies for that. Let's just jump into it soon here. So room has a set of entities, which means room needs to understand when an entity leaves and enters the room. Okay, let's just start refactoring some of this stuff and see how far we get. Yeah, well, whatever. Okay, first things first, let's start at the main. So we have a session, and we're gonna wanna create an ID for this session, as we mentioned. And I'm gonna wanna move these things out and the user objects out as well. So, I don't like this here. This probably belongs in the server object. Yes. And then the model, I want to generate ID. Just like a globally unique, ID, essentially. And maybe they're namespaced. Well, let's separate these two. Let's call this generate session ID. And then we will just create this function. And for now, we'll just use a number. Next session ID goes 1. Next session ID. Oops. I was just been coding in JavaScript over the weekend, so I don't even know what language I'm in right now. Call that a SID. What is the what? What the what? Oh yeah. Go is weird. Okay, session ID, great. So now we'll just say generate session ID. Okay, so what I want though is I want to change this client input thing. Remember, this is like not really client input, it's more like, you know, a session event. Let's create a new one. Session event, and we will put the session object on it. And the event itself, we'll call this well, you know what, we don't need to do too much here. Let's just call it new session event. It's more of a container. It's like an outer character. I was thinking about calling this like session event. I don't know. Payload or something like that. But it's fine. Okay, new session event. So there's nothing to do here. We don't need to hold anything new. We'll just say session. Yeah, I'll just call it new session event, and then session disconnected. Yeah, that's fine. Come up with better names later. Naming's hard. And then we'll just say session input event, which we want the raw input itself. Oops. Okay, these are our session events. And we're probably going to have different types of events later. One is session created event. Okay. So now we just say input. So we want to change this. So we'll say session event. Probably need to change this in a few places. Session event. And I'm going to pull this user thing out, comment this out for now. So we got the session. So we do input channel session event session created event. And then we're going to want to pass in the session. Okay. So that handles that. And then now when we get the message, we'll call this input. We'll just send that, which looks like this. And we'll handle the disconnected. Actually, I might as well handle it here. Now we can send that, oops. Send it here. We can also send it there. Duplicating a little bit, but that's fine. So session, was it input event? Yeah. Now we can send in the input. Okay. Good. So I'm leaving this commented out here so that, because I know I'm going to come back to it later, and it kind of marks it that I need to do that. So now our connection system's doesn't know shit about anything. There's a session write line, which I'm not a fan of. You should actually, it should have a channel on it itself to send messages back in a buffered way, so that this is non-blocking on the from the main thread, because we call it from the main Go routine essentially. But we're not worried about scale right now, and this could be made to be non-blocking later. So because it's a function. All right. So now we have this client, the start game loop, which we don't want anymore. Now we want a session event, and we'll change that to session event. Okay. Event channel. We're gonna, this word event is gonna be overloaded so much, so we should just get ready for that. Brace for that. Okay, so the event itself, we want to know the type. So we have the type, and again, so already we have the session event, and then, you know, like the payload itself, and then the actual, I mean, it could do message, but again, it's just going to be overloaded. I should open up a thesaurus here. But it's nice to just qualify things. And then what did we call it? Event. So we want the event itself. Okay, so we don't have message event. These are no longer the types we want. We could use interfaces, by the way, so that we know what we're getting. But session disconnect event and session input event. Okay, so I like that better. So this game loop, really we should I mean, I guess this is a game loop. It's really like session handler, you know, so this is kind of session handler. Now we have created, so we want to create the user, remove user, and handle input. So this is going to send an event into the world and get the user itself. So let's see here. Let's comment this stuff out. We don't want this. Again, I'm just leaving it commented out so that we get back to it. So I'm going to come over here again. Now create our user. So we have, I'm going to leave that generate name, come back to that later, even though I'm tempted. So what did we say? We said that the user has a, remember, a back to the, I don't like those. We did that. We did this. So the user, let's come back to this user object. So what did we say? We said user as an, so we said, first of all, we have this entity type, right? Call it entity ID. Let's make this an interface. Just use entity ID, and then we'll do type entity. Let's call it this. I mean, it could be lowercase, but well, let's do this new. Okay, let's just call it entity. I don't know what I want to do here yet, to be honest, but probably abstracting this too early, too soon. But we'll deal with that later. We just know that we have this at, oh yeah, wait. Anyway, so we have this top entity structure, All these objects have that. So we are inheriting that. So we don't need this anymore. So that means we're going to have this concept in the world of, all the entities. So the world should be responsible for constructing objects, constructing entities, and all that sort of thing. So name and session, at least we know that. Unless I'm going to capitalize these. I don't care about public, private right now. We'll make this easier later. We don't need client input anymore. We might deal with these again. I'm going to move these down here. So we have a user, name, and a session. Okay. Didn't we say we needed to go, from the session to the user, which means we're going to need a mapping of sessions to users. So that makes me think that this session handler could actually be a class which manages that sort of thing. So let's do this. Create a new file called session.go. And then we want to type session handler. And then we have map string, which is going to be entity ID. Wait. Yeah. Well, session ID to user, right? So users. Just call that users for now. Then we come over here and copy this guy. Call this H. Session handler also needs to know about the world. So we don't need this. Let's call this start. So now we can do session handler equals a new session handler, pass in the world and pass in the, well, actually we just pass in the channel, and then we just go session handler dot start. Create a new session handler here because we have to initialize this thing. World. Okay, now we have what we need. Okay, that starts that. Okay, session create event. Get the handle of the session and get the SID. How did we make this? Session, right. Since remember in Go, You don't have get this, get that. They're set, but you don't usually write get, and you just write the thing that you want to get, which is nice. Kind of redundant. And then, of course, things that you're going to do start with a verb, just to kind of differentiate between functions that do something and getters. Okay, now we have this session. We get the session ID. We know we're okay. So here is where like you would do something like, hey, let's log you in. Let's get your account, this and that. We're just going to create it to keep things simple. Let's go back to this user object. So user, we know we need an entity. So the world, let's have the world responsible for instantiating. Let's see. Okay, so we can have the world responsible for instantiating the entity, and then the entity gets attached to the user object. And then effectively the user is in the world, although wait a second. Let's think. So we know we want to create the rooms and the users, and we want a single ID for all of those. Maybe we should just keep it simple for now and think about this later. Because the user is also going to have to, well, sorry, what am I doing? The user's, oh man, why don't you guys tell me this sooner? User is not the entity. User has a character. The character is an entity. User, call it current character. Oh, let's just call it character. Has the character object, right? Character has the name. User has, I guess probably has an ID, but whatever. Okay, so in the character has a pointer back to the user that it owns. So that's good. Yeah, let's keep this easy so we keep this short, and we'll figure out how to abstract it later. So then a room is just going to contain, okay, so this is the object. This will be backed by other things later. Let's get to rooms in a second. Let's go back to the character. And so we have a session ID, and we want to create the user. So session, create the user. We have a session, and the user has a character. So we're going to also create that to start with. We should call it like avatar or something. I don't know. So name goes generate name. Session, or sorry, user. Okay, so this is the bidirectional stupidity. Oh my God, this is so stupid. So we don't have that yet. So now when we come back to user, what was it again? Yeah, session and character. Session, we have the session, character, and the character. Now we can tie this back equals user. Okay, now we have that bidirectional thing. Remember, given a user, we're going to want to get back at the session itself. So this should be session. which means that now let's just keep this really stupid. Well, the user has the session and the user, okay, so that's right. So we do want the session to users to save us. Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning. So now users sid equals this session. Okay, now everything's basically wired up. Oops, I'm sorry, to the user. Let's first create everything here. Okay, so now user is being created, and then we want the character, and the character is gonna like effectively join the world. We'll handle disconnected later, we're not worried about that. And then session input, so now we can do, let's do this. User equals h users, and we can get the sid. Now we have the user, and then we have the character, and so this can be handled by the character itself. So we can say the character can handle its own input. I mean, this seems a little weird. We'll probably want some other abstraction to handle this stuff. Okay, so let's handle putting them into the world. So let's have this world object, and we'll just have characters running around, and we'll have rooms. Again, I'm going to abstract this stuff a little bit later. I'll have start room, although we'll just make that the first room. There should be one global map of stuff with entity IDs on it, and that would be nice, but we don't. So then we're going to want a function world user or character. I need a good name for this. This is fine. So that'll add them to the room and kind of deal with all that sort of stuff. What else do we want to deal with? I'm going to do this new world, or create world. Oops. Which is going to bootstrap itself. Okay. So we have characters, rooms, a start room, which will just be room 0, so we don't really need that. Let's delete these for now. Okay, return world. So initialization, I'm gonna move this code we have. There's some code somewhere that, maybe it is in this function. Yeah, that creates the rooms. So I'm gonna do that here. So handle character join, we're going to put them in the room. So the first thing is character. Do we have a concept of room, right? No. again, we're gonna break this stuff up later. We'll do rooms 0. We're gonna assume there's a room here. I don't think we need this because we're dealing with pointers, which again we will abstract later. So handle character joined, and I want a function on the character that sends a message. Like it sends some text to be sent back to it. So again, this would have to be abstracted as well. For now, we will do c.user.session.writeLine. Okay, now we have an easy way to send a message. You can come back here and go, where's our world? hworld, handle character joined. Okay. And in here, when we join, we can just say character send message welcome, and then we can do character room and send the room description. I also don't like this. Okay. Oh. Sorry. All right. Now we can say, welcome. Just give it some space here. Let's comment this out and make sure this actually works. Don't think we need that. The event itself, we're not doing anything with yet. All right, let's see what happens. Welcome. Okay, so that works. Type message, nothing happens. So let's deal with that now. All right, now we have a session input event, which means handle input. Again, it's weird to have the world on this. Just say handle character input. Character, and then now we need the event. Input. Oops. Yeah. Handle character input. So, what did we do here? Oh, yeah. All right. Why is this? Oh, we need the character. Okay, so now we just get the user. We can abstract this further, but we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner just yet. Okay. Now we can just do something like this. Send message. You said, oops. So we're just moving things out a bit and making it a little bit easier to manage after this. Or at least that's the theory. Okay, let's just test that real quick. Hi, you said hi. See, this becomes a little bit easier now to reason about. And then I can connect with another character. Okay, so now we need these guys talking to each other. So what we want to do is for character, say other, in character room. Oh yeah, we need to put characters on this object. This will definitely need to be like general entities because a lot of things can be in a room, right? We need to make sure that there's a pointer back. Again, duplicating pointers here. Oops, characters. Other send message. So it could contain us. So we're gonna have to call that out. If other is not equal us. There. Oops. At least this is kind of kept to the world to manage. Now we can test again and say hello. Oh. Oops. There. Okay, but anyway, let's say, okay, so-and-so said hello. Great. Good. And then it says what we said, which is what we want. Barring that $S, which obviously is fixed. Okay, great. So last thing here, let's just handle moving rooms, right? So now we should be able to fix that original bug pretty easily here. So we know we have links. We have a link east and a link west. So the first thing we'll do is check the room we're in and then just check for this verb. And if we don't find it, then we can do talk. We can have it be like what the person says, right? So what I mean by that is first we'll get the room we're in. Yeah. Let's just get the room we're in. Now we'll go through the links. Range, room, links. Now if link verb equals the input, again, you know, this is really hacky, but everything's hacky. Then we will, you know, say this. Handle character, let's say move character. So where are we moving it? We'll pass in the room that we're moving to. Move character, and we know we're going, so here we have room IDs, so we need to get the room by ID. So let's just create a function like for that real quick, not optimal. but should, oh man, should serve our needs. Bear with. If our ID return room, great. So we have to actually make sure that the room is. We'll call it target. Get room by ID. Link room ID. If target, now we can move the character. I mean, we could have moved this, the move to take an ID and do, but here we just we know it's gonna work, and then we can return. Now we'll say that we'll type, otherwise they'll talk. This should be broken up, this code, these two things, but so what does that look like? Well, we know the new room. So we have to remove the user from the other room. Okay, so see, this is complicating things a little bit. So let's just make some functions here. Add character. And then we'll have a remove, oops, this is the room. We'll have a remove character. Excuse me a second. Yeah. Okay, this should really just be like a map to ensure we only have one character at a time, and a map of IDs and that kind of thing. But again, we will do that later. So for now, this is kind of lame to have to remove a character from the list. Yeah, all right, let's just do this. Let's go have like a, cloning remove from list. They don't have like any kind of, it's like go through the thing. That's lame. Yeah, so it's just copying stuff. What's wrong with this? Oh. Let's do this. It's gonna make, oops, oh God. What character? What's this? Oh. Okay, so this just makes a copy and doesn't add that other character. So we will optimize that later. So now we can character, room, move character, and then let's do this over here. We can make this responsible at the very least, and now we're getting a little messy. Now we can do rooms 0, add character. So that'll handle that. Character.room. We're moving ourselves, so that's nice and messy. To room 2, add character. Now let's send the message of the new room. Okay. Let's see how that goes. Should we go east, west, and if I... Okay, so that works. Let's make this world broadcast to room except. Well, let's do this. Okay, so now if I move rooms, I should be able to connect. Hello, go east. Good, now that guy doesn't see it anymore. Now I can go east. Hello, I'm following you. Great, now we have characters moving around. Okay, I'm gonna cut it here. How long are we at here? Dear God, almost an hour of nonsense, refactoring. So when we come back, we'll make this more abstract, probably create some entities, have multiple things in the room, be able to target characters and that sort of thing. So thanks for bearing with in this refactoring session. We can delete all this code now. But we have some basic stuff. So if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. Please do leave comments. I love feedback. It's very helpful. And we'll see you next time. It's Tuesday today, so if you're watching this on Tuesday, happy Tuesday. If you're watching this on a different day, happy whatever day that is.